In Activity 2, Air Pressure, students are introduced to the concept of air pressure. They first observe the rise and fall of measured barometric pressure, and then learn that the barometer moves in response to changes in air pressure. You will need the following materials from the kit: Activity Sheet 2, brass fasteners, barometer, barometer dial chart, plastic jar, rubber band, and a rubber sheet. You will also need to provide scissors. To prepare for the activity, make a copy of Activity Sheet 2 for each student and cut the rubber sheet into 4 equal pieces. You will need 1/4 sheet for the activity. Next, set up the barometer. First, place the barometer with its dial facing up in the plastic jar. Then, stretch the rubber sheet taut across the top of the jar to make an airtight seal and secure it with the rubber band. Test the seal by pressing gently on the rubber sheet, which should make the barometric needle move. If the needle does not move, try using a smaller rubber band to secure the sheet. Finally, cut the arrow on the barometer dial chart so that the arrow points to the inner circle showing the millibars. To begin the activity, hold up the barometer in the plastic jar for the class to see. Demonstrate the motion of the needle by pressing on and then releasing the rubber sheet. Ask students, what do you see happening? They should see the needle moving. Then ask, does anyone know the name of the instrument inside the container? It is possible that some of the students will know that it is a barometer. Explain to the class that a barometer is an instrument used to measure air pressure. Next, ask students, does anyone know what air pressure is? Some students may know that the air in balloons, balls, or tires is under pressure. Explain that air pressure is the force exerted by the weight of the atmosphere on a unit area. Next, give each student an opportunity to press on and release the rubber sheet and watch the needle move back and forth. Then ask students, why do you think the needle moves? Accept all reasonable answers. Explain that by pressing on the rubber sheet, the air is pressed in the container, which makes the air press harder on the barometer, thus increasing the air pressure in the jar. When the rubber sheet is released, the air pressure is decreased. Ask students, can you think of times that you have changed the air pressure of something? Did the pressure increase or decrease? Discuss the students' ideas, then explain that when they blow into a balloon, they increase the air pressure inside the balloon because they force more air into a small space. The balloon stretches because the increased air pressure pushes it out. When the balloon can stretch no more, but you can continue to force more air into it, the air pressure eventually breaks the walls of the balloon and it pops. Next, ask students, when is the air pressure greater? When the rubber sheet is pressed or when it is released? The student should recognize that the air pressure is greater when the rubber sheet is pressed. Explain that the barometer measures the air pressure inside the container. Then ask students, what do you think the barometer would show if I took it out of the container? Accept all reasonable responses. Some of the students may mistakenly predict that the needle will point to 0. Remove the barometer from the container and demonstrate that the measured air pressure stays about the same. Ask, what do you think might be causing this air pressure? Guide students understand that air exerts pressure in all directions, and explain that when you first put the rubber sheet over the container was open to the room, so the air pressure inside and outside was the same. Next, show the students the barometric dial chart and point out the inner and outer scales. Tell them that this scale indicates air pressure in millibars. The millibar is the metric unit of pressure. The barometer measures pressure from 940 to 1,060 millibars, and each line on the dial represents 1 millibar. Explain to the students that they can think of air pressure as a measure of the weight of air. Then, set the dial at any point in the chart and ask students, who can read the pressure indicated by this barometer? Make sure that the students state the units, millibars, as part of their answers. Repeat this exercise a few times, then reverse the exercise by naming a pressure and asking the students to move the dial to show that pressure. When you're certain all of the students understand how to read barometric pressure, distribute a copy of Activity Sheet 2, a pair of scissors, and a fastener to each student. Instruct them to cut out the arrow in the dial and to use the fastener to attach the arrow to the center of the dial. The fastener should go through the dots in the center of the arrow and the dial. Finally, have teams of 2 practice the exercises in step 6 with their model barometer dials. For the first exercise, one partner should set the dial and the other should read the pressure in millibars. Then they should switch. For the second exercise, one partner should name a pressure and the other should move the dial to show that pressure. Then they should switch again. Have them repeat each exercise a few times. To conclude the activity, the students may keep their dials. Return the barometer, rubber sheet, and jar to the kit. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.